This podcast is a proud member of Pod Nation Media Network.
Flicker of reels, the shadows crawl. Curtains rise, a ghostly sprawl. The frames are whispers, the stories call. The tractors hum in a hollow tune. Moonlight cuts through a velvet gloom. Is it a dream or a real too soon? Step into the screen where the dark turns keen. Join you with the Cinephile, unseen. The tales twist and turn as the silent light burns. A world unknown where the shadows yearn.
Hello and welcome, listeners, to Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast, where we take a deep dive into the world of horror cinema, from the eerie classics to the latest spine-chilling releases. Join me as I explore the history, themes, and artistry of horror one film at a time. Whether you're a seasoned horror fan or just stepping into the shadows, this journey is for you. So dim the lights, embrace the fear, and let's talk horror. And let's do that on episode 349. I'm your tour guide of David Garrett Jr., recording out of Columbus, Ohio. So for this episode here is going to be my Scouring Through the Sixes number 12. So my two featured reviews here, I did a quick turnaround here as I was able to go to the Gateway Film Center to check out Evil Deadbird. So that'll be the first featured review that I have here. And I'm actually pairing this up with 1936's The House of Secrets. This makes for an interesting double feature here as we are having secrets contained within a house and families, many dark in nature and everything like that, and these need to come to light in order for things to kind of get rectified. So then, for mini reviews, my Scouring Through the Sixes 1996 rewatch is going to be thinner, and then I got to check out a screener of Corporate Retreat. Went back to the Gateway Film Center to watch the extended version of Backrooms, so I ended up pushing out a movie that was going to be my rewatch for the year out a little bit. And I'll kind of get into that in my outro. But Mouser is going to be another one I got to check out as a screener. It's a 2026 film. And then I have a short film I got to check out thanks to Timothy J. Cox of Trench of the Damned. And then 2 episodes of 100 Years of Horror will end out my mini reviews. So I don't think there's anything else I'm going to do here for this intro outside of saying thank you so much for listening. And I hope you enjoy coming on this journey with me.
What's up, VHS heads? I'm Matt. Join me and my two broskies, Chris and Dave, on our movie comparison podcast, The VHS Abyss, putting 2 movies from the golden age of cinema against each other. Whether it's a teenage soldier head-to-head, like Red Dawn versus Toy Soldiers, or simply picking 2 from a back catalogue of icons of the VHS era, like Roddy Piper or Jamie Lee Curtis. Whatever link we can find between 2 films, we've got you covered. With facts, gaffes and plenty of laughs along the way, join us on all podcast platforms to discover who will be crowned champion of the episode. We are the VHS Abyss. Whether it's a hit or a miss, we love to reminisce.
Are you tired of the coffee crash? Still jitter an hour after your morning cup of coffee? Listen, I used to drink 5, 6, 7 cups a day to just keep going. The anxiety, the stomach pains, the afternoon crash, it was brutal. Then I discovered Rise Coffee, and everything changed. Rise has less than half the caffeine as regular coffee, but here's the magic. It contains 6 organic mushrooms, including cordyceps, lion's mane, and others that naturally sustain your energy without the jitters or crash. We're talking sharper focus, immune support, better gut health, and calm, sustained energy that lasts all day. Plus, it's organic, vegan, and has 0 added sugars. Unlike other mushroom coffees, Rise is USA grown in California. A full spectrum of mushrooms per serving that actually works. Here at Pod Nation, we only partner with brands we actually believe in. And Rise Coffee is the real deal. Head to risesuperfoods.com and use promo code PODNAY15 for 15% off your order. That's PODNA 15 for 15% off. Ditch the crash. Fuel your day the right way with Rise Coffee.
And for my first mini review is going to be Thinner from 1996, directed by Tom Holland. It was written between Holland and Michael McDowell, while also being based on the Stephen King novel. Actually, it's a Richard Bachman book, but yeah. So it stars Robert John Burke, Joe Mantegna, and Lucinda Jenny. So this is a body horror fantasy film that is from the United States. This is currently sitting on a 5.8 on IMDb and a 2.7 on Letterboxd, or synopsis being. An obese attorney is cursed by a gypsy to rapidly and uncontrollably lose weight. So it's a film that I remember watching as a child. My guess would have been I was first starting to rent things from the video store and seeing that this was, based from a Stephen King property. And then this is one that I also had caught in the movie channels regularly after that. So this is one that I had not watched with a critical eye, so I'm doing it here for my Scouring to the Sixes, as I said. So I'm going to start is that this is a solid little film. It has a good runtime of just over 90 minutes. It doesn't waste any time setting our characters up, having the catalyst event, and then a downward spiral as Billy, who is portrayed by Burke, tries to break the curse before it is too late. So I should go ahead and give a little bit here is that a group of Romani people, they're calling them gypsies here, of course, they move into this town. Billy is celebrating with his wife Heidi, portrayed by Jenny, and then what ends up happening is he ends up running down a woman who is Suzanne is her name, and she is actually portrayed by Irma St. Pauli. So after that happens, there's a cover-up job here between Judge Kerry Rossington, portrayed by John Horton, and he's also helped here by the Chief of Police Duncan Hopley, portrayed by Daniel Van Bargen, and then they end up getting Billy off on this, and then they're actually cursed by the guy who's the leader of the Romani people, and his name is Tadzu Lemke, portrayed by Michael Constantine. So it ends up becoming a downward spiral as Billy tries to break that curse, like I was saying. What's good is the events are grounded. Heidi, and then there's a Dr. Mike in this one who they don't believe actually what is happening because it's a little bit fantastical, of course, and why would you believe everything that's going down? And this doctor is being portrayed by Sam Freed. So they're convinced that the diet that Billy is on is finally working. There's a logical explanation there. It's only Carrie Duncan and Carrie's wife, Lita, portrayed by Elizabeth Franz, who know the truth. Billy is a compelling gray character who is content with his obesity despite his wife's health concerns. As a defense attorney, he funds his family's lifestyle by representing criminals. His fatal distracted driving accident involving Suzanne, while technically accidental, highlights his moral failings, particularly given the town's corrupt cover-up. Ultimately, Billy isn't inherently evil. He's just a man who's defined by the unpunished bad things that he's done. Burke has an excellent performance here with the range that he brings from manic to near deathbed during this ordeal. So that'll take me over then to the character of Tadzu, who's a 106-year-old Romani man. He's a complex antagonist. His curses on Billy, Carrie, and Duncan cast him as a villain, but the grief over the death of his daughter, Suzanne, is deeply justified. Given the historical marginalization of his people and the corruption that prevented legal justice, Tadzu takes retribution into his own hands. Although his methods are extreme, his desire for justice remains understandable. Constantine plays this with a creepiness and anger that fits the role well. Something else would be the curses himself. Carrie develops a fast-moving skin cancer that hardens his skin to be like a lizard. Duncan has swelling and bleeding in his face. Billy is where I want to focus, though. As he loses weight, we see that it tries to stem it by eating. But you could also see his consumption and excess as corporate and societal greed. He and his family are well-to-do from the people that he represents. There's a hollow satisfaction that comes with what he has. It isn't until he's at risk of losing it that he sees what's truly important to him, and that ends up being his daughter of Linda, portrayed by Bethany Joe Lenz. Let's then look at the other themes here. What we've already laid out here is that Tadzu can be seen as balancing the cosmic scales. There's truly a tale about guilt, denial, and the refusal of accountability. There's also this idea that one mistake shouldn't ruin somebody's life forever, but a woman lost her life in the accident. There needs to be punishment. We also get shades, once again, of a systematic racism and the fear of the outsider. It then becomes a supernatural bureaucratic struggle for those who's guilty. So that's pretty enough for the story. Let's go over to the actor performances. Burke and Constantine excel as complex gray characters, while Jenny and Lenz are convincing as Billy's family, effectively navigating the ambiguity of the subplot, where there might be a thing here where Heidi's having an affair with Dr. Mike. Carrie Warrior's over-the-top performance as Tadzu's granddaughter, and the supporting cast, including Horton, Von Bargen, Freed, and Mantegna, all deliver effective performances. Let's let them be the filmmaking aspects. Tom Holland's direction keeps the film tight and effectively paced, wasting no time to getting to the central conflict. The tension builds organically as Billy's condition deteriorates, forcing Richie, who is portrayed by Montagna, desperate actions. The practical effects from the convincing fat suit to the brutal injuries and the final pulsating pie are all well executed, while the score provides a fitting, unobtrusive backdrop. In conclusion, this succeeds as a tight, well-paced adaptation that effectively balances supernatural horror with character-driven drama. Driven by the compelling performances of Burke and Constantine, the film elevates its premise beyond a standard curse story to become an insightful exploration of accountability, greed, and cosmic justice. While the heavy themes of guilt, systematic corruption, ground the narrative, Holland's efficient direction and the impressive practical effects ensure it remains a visceral, entertaining experience. It stands as a solid, punchy entry in the King cinematic canon that rewards a closer, more critical look than it often receives. So my rating here for Thinner, I rather enjoyed this and give it a 7.5 out of 10 this time around. And for my second review here is going to be a screener I got to check out of Corporate Retreat from 2026, directed by Aaron Fisher, who co-wrote this with Carrie Lee Romeo. This is starring Odeya Rush and Sasha Lane, as well as Alan Ruck. This is a psychological horror thriller film that is from the United States. It is currently sitting on a 3.8 on IMDb and a 1.8 on Letterboxd, where synopsis being: a corporate executives on a team building retreat face a deadly struggle with their leader turns violently against them. A little bit misleading, but I will let that slide. So I got the opportunity to see this from Deanna from J Goldstein PR. This is one that I had a few friends who have saw this ahead of me as I was hit and play. The consensus is that this is not very good. I was curious about their things in their review. Outside of that, lining this up as a 2026 horror release, I did come into this one blind. Kind of fitting for something that happens later in this. But where I'm going to go ahead and start would be that I like the premise here. While typically I hate corporate team building, this is different though, since everybody here is like an officer of sorts. What is wild is that most of them are quite young. It is just Deborah, who is, I believe, like their chief revenue officer. She's actually portrayed by Rosanna Arquette. She's the older one. Learning that this company is in technology and it sounds similar to like PayPal, that makes sense. But having a group like this go off to a place where we do and then getting killed off, that hooked me. So I do need to talk about a gripe. I'm not entirely sure why they included Ginger in this one, as she is the girlfriend to the lawyer. She's portrayed by Rush. But I mean, her boyfriend here of Cliff, he is definitely a jerk. And him being the lawyer and as young as he is, that makes sense. It's just odd to bring a younger girlfriend who is still in college with all these people here like they do. But, you know, it is what it is. The writing's not something that you're coming here for. He's portrayed by Elias Cavias. I think a bit more care would help make sense of this stuff. Now, she is a psychology major, so I know they're trying to play with stuff there. They needed somebody to push buttons in order to survive. It just feels contrived that Cliff would bring her like he did. So this also feels a lot like the film Would You Rather, where we have a character of Lola portrayed by Sasha Lane, and then you also have Amber portrayed by Zion Moreno, as they're forcing participants into these brutal, violent exercises. While I appreciated the gore, the second act features an unbelievable plot point regarding the leader's behavior. The normal tendency would be to push others to act while shying away. I appreciated what we saw. It raises questions of why his helpers haven't completed the same tasks. It doesn't ruin the experience, but the writing needs to tighten since it does create plot holes. Where I'll then go to be the other themes explored. This is an interesting one here about resentment and aging members of the board being pushed out. There are elements as well of like corporate dehumanization and how workplaces can be predatory. To a lesser extent, there's anxiety about the increasing advancement of technology and AI. The last one would be voyeurism as well, for those in charge to watch this group carry out these horrible deeds. It is sadistic in nature, and see how far people go to survive. That should be enough for the story. Let's go over to the acting performances. Rush was good as our lead. My problem is that with her, it falls more on the writing, and it just goes back to why is she there. I do think that this goes over the top a bit with the goading of the captors. Cavas was annoying, but he would be the type of guy who would bring his girlfriend to a function like this. And then some of the other people here, like Ashton Sanders, there's Kirby Johnson, Tyler Alvarez, Omar Sharif Jr., and I think and then Benjamin Norris. Thought they were all good as the other people who are in this as different type of officers and everything like that. There's also Ellen Toland. I did like Lane and Moreno as the henchwomen. Ruck and Arquette were solid to help round out the cast as well. All it's left then to be the filmmaking aspects. I'll credit the cinematography and framing. First, to capture the beauty of the house, but presenting the deplorable things that are being done there was good. The horror scenes were solid as well. Practical effects good. The iconic scene made me cringe in the best way. There's only one scene with CGI that didn't look great. I can overlook that. Other than that, the sound design and music fit for what was needed. In conclusion, despite some script contrivances and narrative logic gaps, I'd say that this succeeds as a horror film through its engaging premise and impressive practical effects. While the inclusion of certain characters feels forced at times, this is anchored by solid performances and skilled cinematography that effectively captures both the setting's beauty and on-screen brutality. By exploring themes of corporate dehumanization, technology anxieties, and the lengths people go to survive, it offers a compelling, if slightly uneven, experience for genre fans. So my rating here for Corporate Retreat, give this one a 6 out of 10. And this will be hitting VOD here soon if it hasn't already. Then up next, I have a little bit of shorter review here because I've already covered it, and it's going to be Backrooms from 2026. This is directed by Kane Parsons, written by Will Sudik. This stars Chiwetel Ejiofor, Renette Reziv, and Mark Duplass. So the genres here, mystery, science fiction, horror, and then if you want to go with sub-genres here, it's going to be found footage, body, psychological, and supernatural as in the horror realm. And I think also like psychological thriller on top of that. So then we also have a country of origins are going to be United States and Canada. Previous episode I covered this was featured review on 344. Ratings on IMDb 7.0. Letterboxd 3.4. So then for this one here, looks like I lost my synopsis, is after a therapist patient disappears into a dimension beyond reality, she must venture into the unknown to save him. So this one here is, I have now given this a second watch. As I was saying, I went back to the Gateway Film Center to watch the extended version. So Kane Parsons, the young visionary who rose to fame via YouTube Shorts, makes a bold leap into feature filmmaking with a concept he originally created. Despite being born in 2005, he expertly captures a 1990s aesthetic without a feeling of force or over the top. This is actually something I could see people who are on set help him out with, because I know there's some rumors here that maybe he didn't direct this, that it was actually Osgood Perkins, but I'll digress. So this follows Clark, who is portrayed by Ejiofor, a struggling furniture store manager who discovers a literal room behind the wall in his store's basement. This explores the uncanny valley effect of the Backrooms, a dimension that looks like our world but is fundamentally off, where stairs lead nowhere, physics don't quite apply. We have some grounded horror and human drama here. Ejiofor delivers a powerful performance as a broken man dealing with alcoholism and a failing marriage, using the Backrooms as an escape or a chance for something else. And then Rensif is Mary Klein, where she shines as a therapist whose own childhood trauma is forced to the surface as she ventures into the unknown to save her patient. The atmosphere and technical execution, this excels in building atmosphere through the immersive sound design and eerie standout musical score. Visually, the architecture invokes existential dread using sterile, yellow-walled corridors and distorted spaces to make the characters feel like insignificant cogs in a bureaucratic wheel. Some critical insights here. We have the dog analogy. A standout conceptual moment describes the Backrooms like asking somebody to draw a dog based only on a description you gave to them. The result might have some right parts, but it won't quite fit correctly. So a minor letdown is the lead character development is excellent. The execution of the Backrooms concepts feels slightly short of its full potential. There's so much eerie stuff going on, but I think we need a little bit more there. So I think this is a masterclass in tension that serves both as a supernatural mystery and a poignant character study. And so for me, I end up coming in both times as an 8 out of 10. That's not a slight to this movie in any stretch. Definitely will be one that'll be probably contending for just outside of the top 5 for me for my end of year list. So I'm definitely glad that I got to check this one out twice. Then up next, I have another screener I got to check out of Mouser from 2026, written and directed by Mary Patel Gallagher. This stars Romina Valentin, Gavin O'Farriog, and Stephen A. Moeller. So this is a thriller on IMDb. This is a horror film, in my opinion, with some of the stuff that they do here, but you're not able to rate this on IMDb as of yet. Letterboxd, there's not enough information and not enough ratings, so there is no rating over there at the moment. But our synopsis, and this is from the United States, I will say that. Synopsis: a mentally ill woman has visions of a dynamic cat that tells her to do bad things. So this is one I got this chance to see thanks to Breaking Glass Pictures. Lauren reached out with a press release and saying this was coming to VOD soon. Since it was in the horror genre and a 2026 release, I agreed to check it out for a review. Did see a bit of the synopsis ahead of agreeing. Other than that, I did come into this one blind. And where I'm going to go ahead and start here is that this is something that has good elements. The poster hooked me. The basic premise is something that we've seen before, but I still like it. We have a mentally unstable person who consumes alcohol while on a powerful medication and it messes with her head. We all see the dangers of not being truthful with your doctor as well as your support system. This does unfortunately fall short with handling of elements, for me at least. So our lead character, Eleanor, she is portrayed by Valentine. This is a character study of her. I think how she plays this role is good. We see that she's stable from the opening scene, but there's cracks with her mother pressuring her to move home. Then her friends are the same and getting her to come out. That continues with her friend Lauren, who is portrayed by Emma Catt, critiquing what she's wearing and then for not drinking. We see that her grip on reality as she's trying to maintain starts to slip. After seeing this entity of Mouser, who is portrayed by Stephen A. Moeller, this entity is actually a cat that is a human dressed up like a cat, but it's more than likely a figment of Eleanor's imagination. But then she ends up going to this party at Ian's house, the one he's renting. He's portrayed by Farag. And then they start to date, and from there things spiral out of control for Eleanor. Another positive is how creepy Mouser is. The entity looks like something out of Alice in Wonderland, which might be a correlation here with our main character. Some stuff there, but the surreal look at just knowing that it's a figment of her imagination is good. It reminded me of like the Son of Sam killer who claimed that his neighbor's dog told him to go out and kill like he did. Using this a bit more would help. To my knowledge, this figure is only seen a few times. I do think that would enhance if we got to see the entity pushing her to do a bit more. I do have a gripe. I'm not going to spoil what happens, but this uses a plot convention that I hate. For me, it undoes everything that the film is showing us and what it's using it for. The only thing is I will say is it's effective because it's almost like we're about to see everything play out, but it just hasn't yet. But this feels unneeded, and there are better ways to handle things. I understand why. That's something that's asked to Eleanor multiple times. To ensure that all these themes are addressed, the piece shows the fragility of people's mental state and how that can be. The cat and mouse game with sanity is clear when Eleanor wears a mouse mask and is visited by a cat. There's also hints of unresolved trauma and its burden, though this needs to be more developed to fully land. This explores temptation and dark impulses, with Eleanor acting on the latter in her fragmented state. Finally, it emphasizes the psychological isolation. Eleanor is a strong example of somebody who likely shouldn't work from home despite her being capable at her job. Let's turn to the rest of the actor performances. Valentine deserves credit as Eleanor, starting meek before turning darker through seeing her nude and costumed outings. An interesting choice. Lutz works as her true friend, and that would be Anastasia Lutz as Jessica. Kat, somebody who peer pressures her, isn't as good for her mental state. Moeller brings a good voice and physicality to Mouser, while Farag works well as Ian. The rest of the cast fills us out for what was needed. All it's nothing to be the filmmaking aspects. The cinematography and framing are effective with some interesting choices and well-handled surreal elements. Mouser has creepy presence. The mostly practical effects, including the cat, work well with CGI blending in fine. My main issue is the sound. There was one early on where the music was too loud and a few instances of uneven mixing. In conclusion, this is a film that is an interesting premise, a strong lead performance from Valentine, and a creepy central entity that helps give the movie its unsettling atmosphere. I like the way that it explores mental instability, isolation, temptation, and the blurred lines between reality and fantasy. The practical effects, framing, and surreal imagery also help the film stand out. That said, some story choices undercut the impact, especially the plot convention it relies on, and the sound mix has a few noticeable issues. Overall, this is a flawed but intriguing psychological horror film that has potential and some strong elements to make it worth a look, even if it doesn't fully capitalize on its potential. So my rating here for Mouser, I give this one a 5 out of 10, unfortunately. But this is hitting VOD here soon, I believe, from everything that I read. And then I have a short film of Trench of the Dam. This is from 2026, written and directed by Mark Murtha. This stars Daniel Greisheimer, Madi Ken, and Murtha himself. So this one is a horror short from the United States. You're not able to rate it yet on IMDb or on Letterboxd, but the synopsis: during a Christmas Eve ceasefire in northern France, 1944, two exhausted American soldiers find themselves trapped in an eerie calm at the front lines. But when strange sounds echo through the fog and evidence of something inhuman begins to surface near the trenches, the night descends into a waking nightmare neither man was prepared to face. So it's a short film I got the chance to see thanks to Timothy J. Cox. Sent over a press release and had a link for the short. I like to support independent cinema, and this fun in the horror genre, decided to give it a review. Outside of seeing the title and then realizing it was set during World War II, I came to this one blind. So the synopsis as well in recapping this. We have two soldiers, Burke, portrayed by Gresheimer, and Kincaid, portrayed by Ken. The latter is writing in what I'm assuming is like a journal when he's joined by Burke. There is an eerie vibe, even though it's Christmas. A ceasefire should put them at ease, but there's something not quite right. And that's when they start hearing something that they think might be an animal. It's definitely inhuman. We also see soldiers on the other side of no man's land. We have Dr. Wolf, portrayed by Murtha, has plans of violating the ceasefire, but not with gunfire, not shooting them or anything. His creation is unleashed, and that spirals into a night of terror. So when I rate short films, they fall into two categories. They either tell a complete story, or I feel like it might be a stepping stone to a bigger project. I do feel like this one somebody else brought up a thing. This feels like an introduction to a much bigger project. What we get here does tell a complete story, though. We're seeing two Americans getting attacked by something that's unnatural. The filmmaking team, they decided to go something bigger here. I think it could work well. So I will say, I like the concept. When you take a horrific historical event like World War II and then add genre elements, it tends to work for me. Coupled with the fact that we have numerous shows, books, and references that the Nazis might have been using the occult or looking into it at least in order to win, it opens up the door for something like this. The film uses that as something that we've seen before. It would require needing to do something a little bit different to set yourself apart, but as a short, it doesn't necessarily need to, and I think it works well on the shock value. What I will say is that I like how making this smaller like it is, and like it makes the time period feel more real. It's effective. We have two Americans near a trench, relaxing during a ceasefire. On the other side, you have Dr. Wolf and the German soldiers. It does well in what it's going for. I also think that the cinematography and framing help there. They go tighter focus, which helps to hide things that could hurt realism. The costumes feel of the era, and that's something else that's a positive. Just end up with the filmmaking stuff here. I think the monster looks good. It would technically fall in the realm of being a zombie, but not necessarily in the traditional Romero fashion. I like that what they did with the makeup. That was a positive. They do some good things with the design as well. Hearing sounds from something that could be sound scarier. That helps with the atmosphere. Let's go to the actor performances. I thought Ken was good, carrying a look that just suggests his time overseas have weighed on him. Greshmeyer plays well off him. I didn't love the delivery in the opening scene from him. He definitely settles into the role as things progress. Murtha is effective as his German mad scientist, while Owen Simcox and Eddie Schohalwacker, I think about his name. If it's not, I apologize for my pronunciation. They work well as the two soldiers. Sean Worthen is great as the experiment with the movements that add an eerie quality, and Landon Ringler also works well in this role. In conclusion, this is an effective World War II horror short that makes strong use of atmosphere, sound design, and makeup effects in its historical setting to deliver a complete and unsettling story. While the premise is familiar, it could face some challenges if expanded to a larger project, but this works well in its current form by embracing its eerie concept and leaning into its strengths. With solid performances and a memorable creature and tense Christmas Eve setting, this short is a worthwhile watch for fans of independent horror. So my rating here for this one, I give this a 6.5 out of 10. I'd keep an eye open as well if you are into short films, because I think you might enjoy this one if you're into that type of medium. And then here I have two more episodes of 100 Years of Horror. And the first one's going to be episode 13 of Mutants, a look at horror films based on mutants such as Creature from the Black Lagoon and The Abominable Snowman. So this one also looks at other type of mythological beasts like minotaurs and mermaids. We get a lot of good, this is going to be for both of them. We get a lot of great interviews as well as archive interviews and like showing clips from the films. The Abominable Snowman falls in this one, early version of the Yeti. They bring up one that I've actually covered on the show, the Snow Creature. This actually makes for an interesting film because they do the human versus beast debate for the United States, because they bring this in and they have to figure out, is this considered an animal or is it considered a human, because it is human-like. Another one that I got to check out semi-recently is the Mole People. That's a Universal one that had John Agar. He talks about it. The Creature from the Black Lagoon. This brings up some of its sequels. Fun to hear the fun scenes with people behind the stuff that they were doing with the creature, and how Riku Browning's abilities underwater were very impressive to the people that were working with him. They also bring up another one that's inspired by Black Lagoon, which is going to be Kuruku, the Beast of the Amazon. You could almost look at some of these like This Island Earth, where they have aliens that are more humanoid, so they're kind of mutants. That was a Universal film as well. Another one would be The Day the World Ended. This is a Roger Corman joint. He actually gets interviewed here, which I love hearing from him. R.I.P. He's his wealth of knowledge and just what he was able to do. Little Shop of Horrors technically you could consider here as well, even though this is like a plant that's mutant-like. And then one of the last ones they bring up here is an interesting little one of The Black Sleep that had John Carradine, Basil Rathbone, and Bela Lugosi. It also had Lon Chaney Jr. That was just kind of fun to hear about some of these different ones that kind of fall into this one. But I gave this episode here a 7 out of 10. And then the other one I'm going to do here is going to be Freaks. So this one actually is a little bit more. So this one looks at portrayal of physical deformities, including the Hunchback of Notre Dame, and also people that were just naturally born with some issues as well. I'll kind of get into that one here in a little bit, but deformities, Christopher Lee, as he's hosting this, talks about Scaramanga from The Man with the Golden Gun, the James Bond film, can be natural or inflicted on people. We have like Reggie Nalder, who was scarred from a fire in real life. I actually recognize him. He was in Mark of the Devil, where they talk about him here. He's also in The Bird with the Crystal Plumage as the assassin that kind of gets involved there. Another one would be Rondo Hatton, who had a large face from a condition. It was acromegaly. They think that he actually had this in his body, but then poison gas in World War I, they think, triggered it while he was doing some trench warfare. They actually highlight this condition in The Monster Maker. They also bring up another one called The Unearthly. I don't remember much about that one, but I haven't seen it either. They talk about Lock Martin in The Day the Earth Stood Still and Invaders from Mars. He was extremely tall, so it's considered to be, a freak, if you would look at it that way. They bring up another actor here of Angelo Rosito, who was called Little Angie. He was a little person actor. He was in Freaks. The author doesn't think that there's a lot of talk about if Todd Browning was actually being compassionate with that one. Some of the people that knew him don't necessarily think that was the case. A lot of this you can actually give credit here to P.T. Barnum, who had a freak show with his circus, and he's actually the one who coined the term Siamese twins because of Chang and Ang. There's also two actresses who had this condition, and they grew up in sideshows in vaudeville. There's actually a film with them featured called Chained for Life. There's some different people here that they had in The Magic Sword. There's also The Human Monster with Bela Lugosi. He had a giant as a henchman, so that's where they're giving it here. They actually bring up one here with Peter Lorre called Face Behind the Mask. I've actually seen that one and covered it on here. She Demons. I've not seen this one, but the director's wife was actually the one made up to look like the monster there. It was kind of fun to hear. Beverly Garland. She said some super nice things about Lon Chaney's parents because it sounds like she was in a film with him, but she does talk about, once again, about how his parents were mute and it taught him how to be a better mime. And, they also talk about a movie like The Man of a Thousand Faces with Chaney. He, I didn't realize this, but for The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Quasimodo actually meant part human. Lon Chaney Jr. actually did a test for Quasimodo, and that was for the 1939 version that ended up going to Charles Lawton. They show the Anthony Quinn version from the 50s. Lon Chaney Jr. was a hunchback, though, in Route 66. It's kind of a cute little scene that they have there. They talk to Gary Chaney, the grandson, just kind of things that his grandfather and everything might have relayed from, Lon Chaney Sr. and Jr. And then they also bring up Michael Berryman, who's in a few different films here, and he was in The Hills Have Eyes. So for this one here for Freaks, I also give this one a 7 out of 10. So that's all I've here then for mini reviews. Let me go ahead then and get you over to the trailer of my first featured review.
Alice? What's wrong? What happened?
We found you.
William, my sweet boy. I would give anything for us to be together again.
Our grandfather believed the devil would return if anyone read from the Book of the Dead.
The whole family can be reunited.
Cheers to your perfect family.
And for my first featured review here is going to be Evil Dead Burn from here in 2026, directed by Sebastian Vanasek, who also co-wrote this with Florent Bernard, and we're also giving credit here to Sam Raimi for coming up with the original idea. So this is starring Sohila Yaqub, Tandy Wright, and Hunter Duhan, while also having the likes here of Errol Sand, Greta Van Den Brink, Luciana Buchanan, Alan Shabbat, Maud Davey, George Poller, Keanu Kareem, Victory Ndukwi, and Tapwia Soropa. I think it might be how you pronounce those names. I hope I didn't mispronounce any of that. But this is part of the Evil Dead franchise, of course, according to IMDb and everybody who knows and just looking at the title. But this is body horror, monster horror, psychological horror, splatter, supernatural. They kind of consider this to be zombie. I don't, because this is definitely more possession type stuff. But this is a fantasy mystery film as well. And this is a co-production between New Zealand, United States, and Canada. Currently sitting on a 6.9 on IMDb. Nice. And a 3.5 on Letterboxd, where our synopsis being. After the loss of her husband, a woman seeks solace with her in-laws as one by one they transform into deadites. She comes to discover that the vows she took in life survive even in death. So this is a film that I was intrigued to check out here. The Evil Dead franchise is one that there has not been a bad movie so far in it. I grew up with Army of Darkness, then sought out the original and sequel soon after. I actually watched them out of order. I watched 2 and then 1. But this is one that I wanted to catch on the opening night because I needed a 2026 horror release. As you can tell, this is a quick turnaround. So I went to the Gateway Film Center to check this out. Let's start with some featured notes, though, and I'll start with our director here, Vanasek. He has done this for 2 features and 5 shorts. I've seen both of them, of his features now, as they both are in the horror genre, with the other one being the French spider film of Infested. Now, as a writer, he also has the same 2 that he directed and has done 2 shorts. There's a co-writer here, Bernard, who co-wrote Infested. He's also written 11 total features and 4 shorts. So I've seen 18% of his stuff overall, and these are the only 2 that he did in genre, was this and Infested. Now, Raimi is credited here as the original writer. So in this role, he has 6 films and 1 short. Kind of interesting is that he's given this credit here for Darkman 2 and 3, Evil Dead Remake, and then Evil Dead Rise, and now this. I'm just missing the upcoming Evil Dead Wrath. Moving to our cast, I'll start with Yaqub. She's been in 17 movies and 3 shorts. I've seen 3 of her works. They're all in genre. She's done 4 total with this, Climax, and The Carpenter's Son. I have not seen The Balconettes from 2024. Then her co-star of Wright has been in 13 motion pictures and 2 shorts. I've seen her in 3 now. So borderline horror, she was in Jack the Giant Slayer. I only consider that one because it's kind of an interesting little dark take. Kind of kaiju type stuff there with what they're doing with giants, but officially she's been in 3. I've seen Pearl and now this. I'm just missing Black Sheep, but I've seen 66% for stuff in genre, 23% overall. Then last a look at Duhan. I recognize him from the show Wednesday. He's done 5 features and 3 shorts. First of his works that he's done in genre that I had, or just in general here actually. So let's jump in this movie here, and we start this off with a couple guys fishing in a lake. They are Leo, portrayed by Ndukwi, and Jared, portrayed by Kareem. Leo keeps getting calls from his girlfriend, and it's annoying Jared. He doesn't want him to answer, just to be present in the moment. Leo does eventually give in. Jared is then attacked by something in the lake. Leo tries to save him and is attacked as well. So it turns out to be a possessed woman of Jessica, portrayed by Van Den Brink. So she heads out to the road and waits with a car speeding towards her. Things then shift over to a club. It belongs to Will, who's portrayed by Polar. He's there with his wife, Alice, portrayed by Yaqub. They're celebrating Will's brother's birthday, Joseph, who is portrayed by Duhan. He's there with his girlfriend, Thaya, portrayed by Buchanan. We see that there's some issues with Will and Alice. It results in a fight. She goes out for a cigarette, and the fight continues outside. Will ends up getting behind the wheel despite drinking. Turns out he's the car that is speeding towards Jessica, and he crashes and ends up dying. Then shifts over to the funeral service. Will is to be cremated. There is construction going on outside, and it disrupts the service. Alice isn't dressed up, wearing like a hoodie and sweatpants. She also didn't prepare anything to say. Drawing an ugly glance from Will's father of Edgar, portrayed by Shahand, and then Susan, portrayed by Wright, as she's trying a bit to kind of not be mean to her, but grief is strong. Edgar follows the tech to the room where the cremation will happen. He demands time with his son and hears knocking. He tries to break open the casket, and we see that whatever was inside of it attacks Will and has now taken over. Edgar watches on in horror as the tech is ripped apart. The demon then turns its sights to Edgar. Everybody goes back to a house that was given to Joseph. It was originally the family summer house, and he was supposed to be taking care of it when he lived there. It's now run down. This upsets Edgar. Susan tries to get lunch ready. She also scolds Joseph for not throwing away items in the attic that belonged to her father, who was voiced by Shabbat. He was in the occult, into it. And it sounds like he abandoned his family to explore this. Also, there is Susan's mother, Polly, portrayed by Davy, who has dementia. Whatever possessed Will is now inside of Edgar, and it's manifesting. He tries cutting his arm and is stopped by Alice. Everything then leads to lunch, where it goes off the rails. The family dog is attacked. Joseph tries to stop the father, which leads to Edgar being injured. Thea and Joseph try to take him to the hospital, but they don't get far. It is a fight for survival as the Deadites try to find an artifact that Susan's father had, and it will rip the family apart to look for it. So that's really my recap and introduction to the characters. After leaving the theater, I enjoyed what we got, but I still had issues. It wasn't until I sat down to write my review and connect certain dots that things made more sense. The opening sequence mirrors Evil Dead Rise. Jessica, I believe, is the woman from that opening, and her rampage continues, leading to this targeted family. I love the thread because it expands mythology with another connection in the end. I'll then focus next on something that I learned before seeing the film. Family is central to the story. We first met Will and Joseph. Will isn't shown positively, as he and Alice clearly have long-standing issues that eventually erupt, leading to his death, and the family blaming her. Joseph, meanwhile, is struggling to follow through. Will notes that he started several books without finishing them, and Edgar is hard on him once they reach the house. I like how these flaws set the stage. Let's then finish looking at this family. Susan is broken now that she lost Will. Her and Edgar clearly favored him. He had a successful restaurant and was married. Joseph is moving through life. His parents love him, but Edgar expects more. Susan blames Alice, but she's willing to show affection to her daughter-in-law. But it's the best things get revealed that she starts to lose that feeling and is hard on her as well. Edgar is just angry. He doesn't try to hide it. His encounter with the demon amplifies that. Polly has mental issues, which are sometimes played for comedy, actually. I do want to shift to looking over to our lead character. This is a struggle that she becomes the focal point as things escalate. What is interesting is that as they develop, we see that there are some deeper issues here between her and Will. She doesn't cry at the memorial because there's no more love there. He was cruel toward her. It goes past what we saw in the opening sequence. She's considered going back to France here to figure out what to do next. She's forced to face the trauma head on. Jakob's performance here is great with what she goes through. Let's then look at the supernatural elements. What is interesting is that we don't get the traditional reading of the Necronomicon. There's a scene here where Alice starts to and then stops, but then we see that Susan's father has already done some translations. The information that we needed is there. His focus is more on finding the Kandarian dagger that could kill the Deadites. We also get the idea that for the records found in Evil Dead Rise, they're the members of the same group that this father was as well. I do like that correlation and how the events of the previous film led here. That brings me to the filmmaking. I love the isolated house setting along with the strong cinematography and framing. This felt more grounded than the original and how the characters were trapped, which I always appreciate. The brutality worked, with several moments making me cringe in the best ways possible. The practical effects were strong. I had some minor issues with some CGI. The dark humor fit while the music and sound design were both effective. Before moving away from the story, I did want to highlight some of the other themes. Violence is central, especially domestic abuse through Edgar, which isn't always physical. This feels like the intergenerational cycle seen in Will's treatment of Alice. The film also explores placency, silence, and passive witnessing. Susan enables Edgar and ignores Will's actions, while Joseph reflects cowardice through passivity. Victim blaming also appears, along with xenophobia and blaming the outsider for the family's problems. All that's left then for some trivia is going to be the acting performances. Jakob is great as our lead, quietly taking a backseat during the memorial, and arrival at the house before emerging as things unravel and she fights to survive. Wright and Shand work well as the grieving parents, with this escalated anger ignoring until it goes too far. Duhan is effective, earning a strong reaction from me. Buchanan and Davy are good, while Polar, like Joseph, frustrated me in the intended ways. The rest of the cast kind of fills this out for what was needed there. And then let me go ahead and get over to this trivia here. Is that Sam Raimi actually selected Vanek as director after being impressed with his work on Infested. Vanek's intent for the film was to create a visceral sensory experience that punches the audience in the gut. I want people to feel physically drained when they leave the theater, like they've been put through an emotional and intense journey. The first film in the Evil Dead series not to feature an appearance from Bruce Campbell is Ash Williams. However, in addition to producing the film, a photo of Campbell is on the wall of the house of the staircase, which I thought was kind of a cool touch there. There was some brutality that was trimmed here, so it didn't get an NC-17 rating. The Deadites here have their own fighting style. They are smart and they are playing with you. He told that to the actors, behave like animals type thing. Thought that was kind of a good thing there. There's a kind of crazy thing here with like a scene in a car that I rather enjoyed. This contains an error repeated throughout the Evil Dead series. The word Necronomicon does not, as stated here, mean Book of the Dead. It is a translation to Book of Dead Names. The scene had to either be edited or cut from the final cut so the movie wouldn't get an NC-17 rating. I'm not really sure what scene that would be, though. Every Deadite has its signature look. I think on the worst day, it was roughly like 3 hours, but the more we did it, the more some time was kind of knocked off and everything like that. So there's a lot of stuff here. Ash Williams has not been in a film since Army of Darkness, ignoring the show. And 2013 and Rise gave the impression of being mostly standalone, but Rise heavily implies the presence of 3 books, means a 2013 entry as a stealth sequel, and Byrne follows up on that by bringing back Jessica from the opening and ending of the prior installment. And there's also something I'm going to say here, that there's a return in this one as well that would also kind of show that these are more connected than, So in conclusion, this is another strong entry in the franchise that continues to find fresh ways to expand its mythology while staying true to its brutal, chaotic roots. The family drama gives the horror a stronger emotional foundation, and Alice's survival works because it ties the Deadite threat to trauma, abuse, and blame in a meaningful way. While a few effects and story choices held it back slightly, the isolated setting, vicious gore, dark humor, sound design, and committed performances, it helped this as a tense, worthwhile theatrical experience. It may not be perfect, but it keeps the spirit of Evil Dead alive and proves that there's still plenty of blood left in the series. So my rating, though, for Evil Dead Burn, I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10. Since this is so new, there's not really anything that I want to spoil here or anything like that, so let me go ahead and get you over to the trailer of my second featured review.
What time?
I don't know exactly.
I wish I could go in your place.
Oh, for goodness sakes, Dad, stop worrying. London's only 15 miles away.
Here's the stuff I need. Tell them to make a double strength this time. Never can tell what might happen.
All right.
Be sure no one sees you go in or come out.
You'll be all right, won't you?
Of course. Gregory and I can handle the situation.
I'll take the path through the woods, so I won't be seen leaving here.
Good idea.
Bye, Dad. Be seeing you.
Hey, miss.
And for my second featured review is going to be The House of Secrets from 1936, directed by Roland D. Reed. Now, this is written by John W. Kraft and then comes from the original source material by Sidney Horler. This stars Leslie Fenton, Muriel Evans, and Noel Madison, while also featuring the likes here of Sidney Blackmer, Morgan Wallace, Holmes Herbert, Ian McLaren, Jameson Thomas, Sid Saylor, Maddie Fain, George Rosener, Maddie Kemp, Rita Carlisle, Ramsey Hill, Olaf Heighton, Richard Lancaster, Edgar Norton, and Tom Ricketts. This is a horror mystery film that is from the United States. It is currently sitting on a 5.1 on IMDb and a 2.9 on Letterboxd, with our synopsis being: 2 men stumble into an old mansion and get involved with a crazed scientist, torture chambers, and sinister medical experiments. So this is what I learned about when I was compiling my list of films for 1936. Outside of lining up the year, title, and the key people behind it, I decided to come into this one blind. I'll admit that I assumed that this would be using elements of old dark house tropes. I mean, House of Secrets kind of falls in line there. As it started, it was where I learned that this was actually based on a novel that was adapted to a stage play, and then, of course, this was adapted from that. So let's do some feature notes. So first, I'm going to start with our director here of Reed. He's done this for 4 features and 2 shorts. This is the first of his works that I've seen. None technically fall in genre according to Letterboxd. Now, the writer of the screenplay is Kraft. He did this for 32 films and 5 shorts. First of his works that I've seen. Nothing else would be considered horror for him either. So then, this is the only work that was adapted from Horler. And then moving to a cast, I'll start with Fenton. He was in 56 motion pictures and 2 shorts. First of his works that I've seen. He did one other one in genre, and it actually starred Conrad Veidt, and that was The Last Performance from 1929. That looks to be a silent film from everything I'm seeing. So, his co-star of Evans has been in 33 movies and 18 shorts. This is the first of hers that I've watched. Nothing else of hers falls into the genre. Then lastly is going to be Madison. He was in 63 works and 2 shorts. He was in one other genre film, The Black Raven from 1943. But then for this movie here, we start on a ship that is traveling the English Channel. It is here that we first meet Julie Kenmore, portrayed by Evans. She doesn't reveal her name here, though. There is a man who is talking to her, and she clearly isn't interested. Barry Wilding, portrayed by Fenton, notices and steps in, rescuing her from the situation. Much like this other suitor, though, he's smitten with her. Something I should point out is that she refuses to give her name or personal information to him either. This is something that we'll end up learning later on. So then we shift to the hotel room belonging to Barry. He is visited by a friend from the United States of Tom Starr, portrayed by Blackmere. He is a detective who is tracking down a murder suspect from a crime in Chicago. I think his guy's name was like Three-Fingered Dan or something along those lines. So while they're talking, Barry gets a call from a British solicitor requesting a meeting with him that is urgent. He agrees to come in. So this meeting was with Coventry, portrayed by Thomas, and he reveals that Barry had an uncle who passed away. There are no other living relatives, so the estate that is named the Hawk's Nest is left to him. It is large and secluded. Coventry does reveal that part of the rule here is that in order to accept it, he has to agree to never sell it, and it almost feels like it needs to be like notarized. So he goes to check out the property, and it's intriguing, but things kind of take a turn when he gets there. He discovers that it isn't empty. First, he finds 2 dogs. There is then a man who confronts him, demanding that he leaves immediately. So this is a butler, like a valet of Gregory, portrayed by David Thursby. Then a person comes out with a gun. We will come to learn that this is actually Julie's father of Dr. Kenmore, portrayed by Wallace. Barry tries to get him to tell, he's trying to say this is his property. Now, these guys don't care. Julie comes out of the house and sees Barry as he's ran off. So Barry is frustrated by what happened. He seeks out a police officer. Now, this police officer believes that Barry is intoxicated and takes him in. He even gets annoyed when Commissioner Cross, portrayed by McLaren, sides with the officer. There's also this Home Secretary who is Sir Bertram Evans, portrayed by Herbert. Now, he wants Barry to stay away from the place. He even puts in a call to Coventry trying to get Barry to sell. Julie then comes to visit him personally, revealing her identity and who the men at the Hawk's Nest are. She can only tell so much for his protection and needs him to stay away. So there's more going on here, though. Barry doesn't listen and goes back to the estate. He hears screaming and cackling from a madman. This person is actually played by George Regas. Now, this leads to Julie screaming. Dr. Kenmore, along with his crew, and Julie try to get Barry to stay away, though. There's another complication here with Dan Wharton, portrayed by Madison, and his crew. They're from America, and this main guy here is the one that Tom is after. They're here about a rumor of Barry's ancestors being pirates and hiding treasure on the grounds. So that's where I'll leave my recap and of the characters. Where I want to start is by saying that this film has a lot going on, even though it's only 70 minutes long. How it starts and tries to build things was good. It did hook my attention. The problem then becomes that truly nothing happens after that. He repeats certain things over and over again. Much of this does happen is through dialogue, which isn't as interesting, unfortunately. So then let's start with some positives, though. I'm a sucker for old dark house narratives. We get that only for the fact that there's this old estate, the Hawk's Nest. It does have one secret passage that leads to a cavern under the fireplace. They don't do much with this, though. Dr. Kenmore, when we learn more about what he's doing, it's something that could be lumped in here as well. A majority of this, though, takes place at the hotels that Barry is staying in, and then him fighting to get into the house. So you're pretty much just seeing him on the grounds that he has inherited. Now, something else that started well was with Julie. We have her having this man, on a ship approach her. She's not interested, and we see toxic masculinity in play there. It then takes Barry stepping in for that guy to leave, but then he's doing something similar. He won't leave London until he finds out who she is. Now, she's already turned him down once. We do see that there's more to it. These two are joined by him owning the manor and her family being there. I just don't love that they're pushing here. Now, the saving grace is that the romance being formed is through a shared crisis, so I can kind of overlook that a bit, as she does seem a little bit more interested in him than the other guy, but we're still kind of getting that thing that if you fail, keep trying, even though the person said no. So there are other themes here, like blending modernity with a gothic past at this historic Hawk's Nest, which Dr. Kenmore's group is determined to protect. Tensions arise from this clash between Dan's New World criminals and the estate's Old World elegance, while the narrative utilizes ghost and madman tropes, with the former suggested by Barry's landlady. Finally, the story examines the conflict between personal property rights and government interference as Sir Bertram and the police obstruct Barry's control over the manor until the climax. Let's then shift over to the acting performances. In general, they were fine. Fenton does have a bit of a charm that he's able to turn on, which is good. Evans works as his counterpart. I do wish we had a little bit more of them as the leads but they do get lost at times for me. Madison is fine as this gangster who is here to steal the treasure rumored to be on the estate. Wallace is commanding in his role. Blackmer, Herbert, McLaurin, Thomas, and the rest of the cast do build up different elements that are needed for this to work. All that's left then to be the filmmaking aspects. For a little bit of trivia, now the cinematography and framing are adequate. Reflecting the film's stage play origins, the short runtime is underutilized by focusing too heavily on Barry trying to enter the house rather than exploring the interior. While the minimal effects are acceptable, the repetitive cackling and screaming becomes excessive while still being eerie, and the music is unremarkable. Ultimately, the film fails to hold my attention. So there's 2 bits of trivia here. Now, the earliest documented telecast for this was in New York City back in November of 1948, and then it first aired in Cincinnati in, actually, this one looks like it's going to be also the same month of 49, and that is going to be, on these channels that they're actually providing, which I don't know enough about. So then the quote, anything up to half of my kingdom, is a quote from the Bible. It appears several times in the book of Esther and once in Mark 6:22 to 24 for the verses. All right, then. So, in conclusion, this presents an interesting setup that leads into old dark house tropes that are pretty classic, but ultimately falters in its execution. While the film benefits from a decent cast, notably Fenton and Evans, and some intriguing thematic elements regarding property rights and Gothic tradition, it struggles to maintain momentum. The short runtime is hindered by repetitive plot points and over-reliance on dialogue, failing to fully capitalize on the eerie potential of the Hawks' Nest estate. Despite its promising premise and competent performances, the film lacks the necessary engagement to leave a lasting impact. So for me, I did not really care for this one necessarily. I am going to come in with my dreaded 5 out of 10 here. Some good things, some things that don't necessarily work for me. So yeah. So I'm not going to do a spoiler section. There's not anything I need to do there or to kind of delve into deeper. So let me go ahead then and get you over to one last break before I close out the show.
Pod Nation TV has you beamed up with Out of This World award-winning podcast found exclusively on Pod Nation TV. Download Pod Nation TV for Roku and Fire TV. Pod Nation TV, Out of This World.
Listen, here's the truth. If it's not something you love to do, automation is mandatory. You didn't start your podcast to spend hours editing clips. You started it to create, connect, and grow your audience. But here's the problem. Every other platform works with video podcasts, and manual editing eats up your most valuable asset, your time. That's where Opus Clip changes everything. Upload your video, and Opus Clip will automatically find the gold nugget moments, auto-clip the captions for the best parts, perfect for TikTok, Reels, and Shorts. 1 hour-long episode becomes 10, 20, even 30 viral-ready clips in minutes. The tool even predicts each clip's viral potential, so you know exactly what to post. No more tenuous editing, no more wasted hours, just you staying in the place that you love to be, creating content that matters. Head to podnationopus.com for your free trial and get back to doing what you do best. Stop editing and start creating now.
And welcome back. So if you'd like to send me any sort of feedback, anything you want read on the show, or any screener requests, anything like that, you can send those to journeywithacinephile@gmail.com. If you'd like to read any of my written reviews or see any of the old past podcast episodes, all of that is being stored over at Journey with a Cinephile. That is my blog, and that's going to be horrorreview.webnode.com. If you'd like to follow me and become friends on Facebook, it's going to be David Garrett Jr. is my name over on there. There's going to be a link in the show notes. And then if you'd like to follow me on Twitter, it's going to be Buckeye from Mish. And then if you'd like to follow my Letterboxd page where I have all of my reviews, whether that is going to be horror or non-horror, that's going to be David OSU is my name on that. Instagram and Threads, I'm David OSU87. Over on my personal Instagram page, you might see some of my family stuff every now and then whenever I remember to post something. My wife is much better at it than I am. But then if you'd like to follow the Journey with a Cinephile Instagram, that's going to be Journey with a Cinephile, all one word. And then also direct you, if you'd like, to the Discord channel. That's going to be the Nightclub Discord, but I have a page over there. And there's also some other great pages of other shows and them kind of messing around and everything like that. Do highly recommend if you want to go ahead and check that out. And then the last thing I'll actually say here, if you would like to listen to the show a day early, this is always going to be streaming over there on the Pod Nation TV app. So I will have, once again, a link in the show notes for that if that is something that you're interested in. So yeah, there's some great stuff here. There's some great shows on some of these other networks and stuff. I highly recommend checking them out. And for my next episode, is going to be breaking away from doing my Scouring to the Sixes. I do my Voyage Through the Fives episode, 350. So this is going to be my top 100 films that I checked out here for Voyage Through the Fives. I'll do some honorable mentions and then as well as my bottom 10. But then for mini reviews, I'm already in the process here of watching Tremors 2 Aftershock. That'll be my rewatch from 1996 for my Scouring to the Sixes there. I believe Undertone is going to be the 2026 rewatch that I'll do there. I've already checked out a screener here of the Rebrand that'll be on there, and then I'll have more just type of stuff to fill it out as well for mini reviews. So I don't think there's anything else to do here for this outro, outside of saying that wraps up this episode of Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of horror cinema. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and follow along for more deep dives into the macabre. Until next time, keep watching horror, and remember, fear is just a frame away.
It had been a wonderful evening, and what I needed now to give it the perfect ending